Hello everyone and welcome back. Let's talk about prompt engineering. Now this is something that is a very growing field. There are a lot of new opportunities coming for prompt engineers, and of course it is a core component of generative AI. That is why I have included this topic in the course. Now before we go ahead and understand what prompt engineering is, let's first understand what are prompts. So when you are talking to Alexa and you ask a question, how is the weather? That is a prompt. If you ask Siri, will it rain today? That again is a prompt. If you ask Google the recipe of a red velvet cake, that again is a prompt. So whenever you are asking a question or giving an instruction and input to get the desired response, that is a prompt. So prompt means a specific question or input that you give to an AI system to the required response. We have a few examples on the screen, like I can tell ChatGPT to summarize the key points of a research article, or I can tell it to write a short story. I can tell DALL-E, which is an image generative application, to generate images of a yellow car. Or I can ask GitHub Copilot, which is a code generation companion, to write a Python program to add numbers. So these are all prompts. So even without knowing this terminology, we were using prompts until now whenever we were entering something on ChatGPT. Okay, so now that we know what prompt is, let's understand prompt engineering and why do you need it. So imagine you are talking to your friend and you ask a very generic question that the weather in New York. Now this is a very vague question. Are you asking about the weather today? Tomorrow? What context are you asking it for? None of this is clear. But if you change the question to something like more specific, I am going to New York this Saturday, how is the weather going to be? Then you will get much better answer. Your friend may tell you that it is raining for few days, so it may flood on Saturday. And as humans, they may throw in some more information, like the bridge so is closed for renovation, so that you may want to avoid that route, all of that, right? So the takeaway here is very simple. If you ask somebody clear, specific, accurate questions, you give the correct context, you will get better answer. And that is what prompt engineering is all about. If you want to get good answers, you need to ask good questions or good prompts. So prompt engineering is all about crafting defined queries so that you ask clear questions, you ask specific pointed questions, you ask unambiguous questions, and you get better, accurate and relevant responses, right? Why don't we go to ChatGPT and try it out and see this in action? So let's start with a very simple scenario. So let's assume that I'm a healthcare professional and I know about artificial intelligence. So I'll just go in here and I will type in the question AI and let's run it. As you can expect, this is a very generic question, right? So what you will get in return also is very generic information. ChatGPT will tell you all about AI, everything, blah, 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 lots and lots of information, right? This information is very generic for somebody who's coming from a healthcare background like me, right? So I need to make it more specific. So instead of just asking a very generic question like what is AI, I can make it more pointed. So I can write something like, I'm a healthcare professional, explain me what AI is by including relevant examples from my field. And when you run this time you will see that you will get more pointed answer. ChatGPT says that okay, you are in the field of healthcare and now it is all the information that pertains to healthcare only. It is talking about diagnostic, personalized medicine, drug discovery, robotic surgery, and it goes on and on. What information it tells you, it's now more pointed, it's now more in the context of healthcare, and it is also giving you relevant examples from each of these areas like we are to do. So let's try one more. This time I am going to ask ChatGPT, let's say for example, what is solar energy? And let's go ahead and run it. And again you would see ChatGPT would start giving me information, generic information. Now I am not saying that this information is not correct. All of what it is telling me is correct. I am not denying that. But it is very generic information. It does not pertain to the use that I am looking for, and so I want to make it more pointed. I want to make it more specific to my use case, and that's where we can do prompt engineering. So this time I will do prompt engineering on a very broad level. Instead of keeping it question specific, I can go in and I can put in a generic prompt in here. So I will say, imagine you are a news journalist doing short summarized reports on renewable sources of energy. When I ask you a question, give me answer in less than 500 words, and they should be bulleted. So I told all my information very clearly. I have set that context very easily for ChatGPT, so it knows what mindset I am coming from. And as you can see, it acknowledged that. It says, if you have a specific question, go ahead. Now it has kept these details in its mind. It knows that whatever I am going to ask it now has to be centered around these aspects that I told it. So now if I go ahead and ask it something like this, tell me about solar energy, especially its use in the decade 2020 to 2030. And as you can see, I am passing some more information in here. I am again setting a context in here that talks about 2020 to 2030. This is in addition to the other prompt that I have already supplied it. And ChatGPT acknowledges all of it. It is giving you bulleted answers like we had asked it. It is telling in the context of 2020 like we had asked it for, and it is telling me answers that relate to what I had asked for. They are very, very specific to what I had asked for, and that is the beauty of prompt engineering. Now, since I had given it a very generic prompt at the beginning only, I can go ahead and use it in another question. So this time I'll just go ahead and ask it, great, now how do I do the same thing for wind energy? And ChatGPT remembers it. It remembers that, okay, you were talking about being a news journalist, you were talking about 500 words, you were talking about bullets, and it acknowledges all of this. It's again talking about 2020. It's giving me answers in bullet, and when I captured this and checked it on, this was close to 300 or 350 words or so, right? So it remembers that prompt. It does everything that I asked for. And this is the benefit of prompt engineering. We get customized output, better output, and that is why prompt engineering is becoming such a hot field. Imagine that you did not need any coding knowledge to do it. This was really an art. You just wrote some English and you got better suited answer, right? So these were some of the live examples of prompt engineering. And in fact, what we wrote in here was a very small prompt. We have cases where there is 20 to 50 lines of prompt. You call out everything clearly, like explain your answers using scenarios or example, put in quantifiable benefits when you can. You do not know the answer, say, sorry, I'm not sure how to answer this. All of these things you can introduce in the prompt to keep it very specific, very pointed, and do not give vague information. That is the whole benefit of using prompt engineering. Okay, so now that we know what a prompt is, let's go back and take a look of how we define a good prompt. What should be the best practices for prompt engineering? First one is clearly convey the desired response. Nothing more important than this. Be very clear in what you need. If you need an executive summary, tell that. So the LLM is not giving you a detailed analysis of 30 lines. Remember, LLM like ChatGPT can often go very lengthy in their response, and the information can become. So tell it very clearly what you need so that there is no ambiguity. Second thing, provide the context or background information. So just like we saw a little while back, we told them very clearly that I am from the healthcare industry or I am a news journalist, and that helped LLM keep answers pointed to that exact context or background. So do not hesitate to set some ground rule first. Third point, balance simplicity and complexity. And what this means is keep a balance between too simple and too complex prompts. If you write something very simple, LLM may give you a wide generic answer, but at the same time, if you throw 10 different things in there, the LLM will get confused and it will give you complete junk. So keep a balance, especially in case of complex topics. And finally, the way to achieve all of this, iterative testing and refinement. So there is no one single rule that fits all. Prompt engineering is an art. It is not just science. You have to be creative, you have to be clear, and you may very well not get the right prompt in the first step itself. So keep changing, keep iterating, keep testing the responses, and finally you will find something that works best for your use. Right. So that was all about prompt engineering. Remember, a very quick and easy way to get better results. You do not need to know any coding. You can simply tweak some English and get better results. However, at the same time, there are a few challenges also. First, results may not be consistent. A small word change in your prompt can change your results. And also you cannot fit too many things into a prompt. If you do that, it would cause confusion. The LLM may give accurate results. So this is where a limitation comes in, and the question becomes, how do we get better results through LLM? How do we get better results for our specific corpus of data? And that's where a concept called fine tuning comes into place. So let's move on. Let's check that out in the next video.